It was a quiet Thursday morning, the kind of morning where the world feels paused, like it hasn't fully decided to wake up yet. The sky was heavy with gray clouds, and a thin drizzle blurred the edges of the streets. The sound of tires on wet asphalt echoed faintly through the neighborhood, a rhythm I'd grown used to in my quiet, predictable life. I came home from work later than usual, exhausted, ready for another uneventful evening. My apartment was small but comfortable, a place that felt more like a waiting room than a home. Same couch, same faint smell of coffee, same silence that followed me everywhere. But that day, something was different. When I walked up the short path to the mailbox, I noticed an envelope inside. Old, yellowed, its corners torn and edges soft with time. It didn't look like any modern mail. No printed labels, no barcodes. Just my name, written carefully in ink. And that handwriting, it froze me in place, because I hadn't seen it in 10 years. It was my father's. At first, I thought it had to be a coincidence. Maybe someone else with the same handwriting or some weird promotional thing. But the moment I took it in my hands, I knew. The way he wrote my name, with that small underline beneath every capital letter. It was something he'd done ever since I was a kid. He said it made names look more important. My breath caught, because my father had been dead for a decade. He passed away after an argument, our argument, the one that split us apart the night he left the house for the last time. A car crash, they said. Instant. I was 17, angry, selfish, and too proud to say I was sorry. And now, 10 years later, he was writing to me. The letter had no date, no stamp, just my name and the return address, our old home, the one we sold right after the funeral. I stood there in the drizzle for several minutes, the cold drops mixing with the warmth of my breath. My hands were trembling. It felt wrong, impossible. Yet somehow, I couldn't look away. Finally, I went inside. I sat at my kitchen table, the sound of rain pattering against the window, and stared at the letter under the dull yellow light. The paper was thin, slightly translucent, like it had traveled too far and for too long. My fingers hesitated, but curiosity, or something deeper, pushed me forward. I tore it open. Inside was a single sheet of paper, folded neatly in thirds. The ink had faded, but the words were still clear. Son, if you're reading this, it means I didn't get to say goodbye. There's something you need to know about that night. I froze. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. That night, the night he died, came back to me like a flood. We were shouting. He told me to stay away from my friends, said they weren't who they pretended to be. I told him he was paranoid, old-fashioned, controlling. I said things I can't even repeat now. Then I slammed the door and left. He followed me. That's what Mom said later. He went out looking for me when it started raining harder. He never came back. A truck lost control on the wet road. That was the story I was told. End of discussion. End of family. Mom never spoke about it again. She packed his things into boxes and moved us away. But now here I was, holding his words again. And they said he had something to tell me. I saw something that night. Something I couldn't explain. If you ever go back to the house, check the wooden box in the attic. You'll understand everything I read it over and over searching for some hidden meaning. The ink was shaky, as if written in a rush, but it was real. Every letter, every loop, undeniably his. I barely slept that night. The sound of rain never stopped. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that envelope. By morning, I'd made up my mind. 2 days later, I was driving back to my hometown, the place I swore I'd never see again. The road felt smaller than I remembered. The trees seemed to lean in closer, the town quieter, like time itself had slowed down there. When I reached our old house, my chest tightened. The paint was peeling. The windows were broken. Ivy had climbed across the walls, wrapping it in green silence. Yet somehow, it still looked like home. The front door creaked open easily, as if it had been expecting me. The air inside was thick, the smell of dust, old wood, and something faintly metallic. Every step echoed. The living room was almost empty except for an overturned chair and the remnants of an old rug. I walked through each room slowly, touching the walls, remembering where every photo and shelf used to be. Then I reached the staircase. The attic was at the top, and I hadn't been there since I was a kid. Each step groaned under my weight. The door was jammed, swollen from years of humidity, but I forced it open with my shoulder. And there it was, under an old, moth-eaten blanket, a small wooden box, exactly where the letter said it would be. The box was dusty but intact. The lock had rusted away, so I pried it open carefully. Inside were 3 things: a photograph of my parents, an old tape recorder, and another envelope. The photo made my throat tighten. They were standing in front of my childhood home, smiling. But in the background, there was something odd. A tall gray building with a strange logo. I didn't remember it being there before. Then I opened the second envelope. "If you're ready to listen," it said. "Press play." The recorder was heavy, covered in grime. I had to replace the batteries before it would work. When I finally pressed the button, it clicked, and then hissed with static. Then came a voice. His voice. "If you're hearing this, it means I failed. They're coming for me. Don't trust anyone from the company." His breathing was ragged, panicked. In the background, I could hear faint knocking, like someone was at the door. "They knew what they were doing, Alex. They used us. Whatever you do, don't." Static. Then silence. I pressed the button again, hoping to hear more, but the tape was done. Just before it stopped completely, I heard one last whisper. "Alex, forgive me." The room suddenly felt colder, like someone was standing right behind me. I sat there for hours, staring at the floorboards, trying to make sense of it all. Who were they? What company? And what did he mean by "used us"? Then I remembered the building in the photograph. That logo, it wasn't random. It belonged to the laboratory where my father had worked. They called it Greenvale Research Institute. They said it focused on environmental safety and water purification. But even as a kid, I'd overheard things. Whispers about experiments, strange shipments at night. I had to see it for myself. The lab was only a few miles away. When I arrived, it looked abandoned. Tall fences, faded warning signs, and windows boarded up. But there was a gap in the side gate. I slipped through and found a broken side door. Inside, everything smelled of rust and chemicals. Papers scattered across the floor, broken computers, a thick layer of dust on every surface. I searched the rooms one by one. Finally, in the back office, I found it, an archive cabinet still intact. Inside were dozens of files, all labeled with employee names. My father's name was there. His file was stamped in red, terminated due to exposure. I opened it. Inside were medical charts, radiation levels, lung scans, and a handwritten note. Subject suffered acute cell decay. Exposure source: uncontained compound. My stomach twisted. This wasn't an accident. He didn't die in a crash. He died because of them. When I got home that night, the city lights looked different, colder. Every sound, the hum of the fridge, the ticking of the clock, felt louder, heavier. I sat at my desk and unfolded his first letter again. At the bottom, below the main text, was a faint indentation. Something I hadn't noticed before. I held it under the lamp, and words appeared. If you ever forgive me, plant the seed in the garden. It's from a place that must never be forgotten. I hadn't seen any seed. I rushed back to the wooden box, emptied it completely, and there it was. A small paper packet labeled in his handwriting, for Alex. Inside was a single black seed. That night, I went to the backyard of my apartment. There was a small patch of soil near the fence, the only bit of earth untouched by concrete. I dug a small hole and buried the seed. The rain had started again, soft and steady. As I stood there, I whispered, "Whatever this is, Dad, I hope it brings you peace." Days passed, then weeks. Nothing happened. Until one morning. The sun was just rising when I saw it, a small sprout pushing through the soil. By noon, it had grown into a white flower. Its petals shimmered faintly, almost glowing. When the wind blew, it made a sound, soft, almost like a whisper, and I swear, it said my name. Since then, I've kept it alive. Every night, I water it carefully. Sometimes when the moon is full, the flower glows brighter, and the air smells like the old attic. I don't know what my father found, or what he was trying to protect, but that flower feels like him. A message that reached me too late, yet right on time. Because in that whisper, I finally heard what he'd been trying to say all along. I'm sorry, and I love you.